ジャパニーズリストリームご覧の皆様、こんにちは。聞こえておりますでしょうか。現在のイベントはクエスティング・フォー・グローリー・ホープ&ヒーリング2をご覧いただいてます。一旦イベントの概要を説明させていただきたいと思います。こちらご覧いただいているチャンネルはジャパニーズリストリーム、いわゆる海外の RTA イベントをイベント元の公認においてミラーしている配信ですね。その言語の放送わからなくても、こういった形で日本の皆さんでご覧いただけるというものです。で、今回のイベントは、もう終盤になってきてますが、クエスティング・フォー・グローリー・ホープ&ヒーリング2ということで、11月の9日から明日15日までのスケジュールですね。15日の朝方終わりますんで、もうあと24時間は切っております。で、こちらはRPG リミットブレイクというツイッチのチャンネルで行われる RT イベントでして、主に RPG 系のタイトルをメインにやっておりますね。はい。で、こちらもチャリティーイベントでございまして、NAMI という団体、ナショナルアライアンス・オン・メンタル・イルネスということで、精神疾患だとかを持つ方やその家族、心の不調や悩みを持つ方々を支えることを目的に設立されている非営利団体です。で、オンラインのチャリティーイベントということで、GDQ 等と同じようなシステムでして、寄付などをすることができるんですが、その寄付に関連して特定のゲームは難易度変更したりとか、エンディング選択というものが、目標寄付金額達成した際に行われますと。またその他では、キャラクター名の選択だとか選択肢においては、寄付金額を表に見立てたビットボーという形で、じゃあどれをやるとかどれを選ぶとか、そういうものを、選択することなどもできますと。ということで、寄付に関する、いろんなところに関しては、サイトの方からご覧いただけますんで、ご興味ある方はぜひご覧ください。あれ、ちょっと待ってね。そっか。少々お待ちくださいね。アドレスを貼りますよ。はい、ということで残り24時間切っている状況ではございますが、最後までぜひお楽しみいただければと思います。ということで続きましてのゲーム、下に NEXT UP と書かれているところですね。TASBot Plays ファイナルファンタジーということで、ゲームはファミコンのファイナルファンタジーかと思いますが、これの TASBot Plays ということで、どういうことをやるかっていうところからのものになるかと思いますが、こちら解説の方来ていただいておりますので紹介します。ピンクパジャマさんです。よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
はい。
タスボットの解説、いわゆる、あるボットが、実機をプレイして、タスのようにプレイしています。タスと、実機ですから、その、初期の、ラムが、固定されていません。最初にその、ラムの乱数を構成する必要があって、構成する、 まあ、ランの、最初に、構成して、このランの中に構成して、乱数調整ができるようになります。
はい。
このファイナルファンタジー、どうぞ。
大丈夫ですよ。すいません。
ファイナルファンタジーの乱数が、ファイナルファンタジーの乱数が、配列にあります。配列どんどん回して、最後の乱数入ったらもうやり直す。回してます。固定の配列。その乱数、最初から最初の戦闘にその模様、がその配列どこにあるかを構成してそこから調整します。その配列の、桁が256です。
はい。ファミコンの FF はね、乱数表ありますね。256まであるやつが、あらかじめ、なんていうか、表の形で決められているというか、それがこう順に動いてるはずなので、まずそこからの調整っていうことですかね。
そうですね。
はい。
それにエンカウントシステムの、どの歩数が次のエンカウントか、それも固定です。
はい。
時期が、パワーした時から固定です。それにこれが、TASBot が実機をプレイしているから、ハードリセット、ソフトリセットしません。だから、本当の 80%、とちょっと違います。チャートがちょっと違います。このハードとソフトリセットなしのチャートが、3分遅い。それにこの、カテゴリーについて4 fighters、戦士4人ですね。その、最初のクラス。4人といっても、急に、短時間に、戦士1人になっちゃいます。その方が早いからです。そのエンカウントの歩数も固定といっても、それがハードが入っている時点ですね。ハードリセットありのカテゴリーなら、その、ワールドマップに、一本前のエンカウンターまで、セーブして、リセットできるけど、これがリセットなしの、環境となります。あと、どんな敵の、体制も、固定となっています。 道が同じ道を歩くなら、そのエンカウントも、エンカウントの姿勢も同じとなります。姿勢といっても、その敵の数も、の数が固定されていません。それが、戦闘の乱数によります。それにその戦闘の乱数が1フレーム、で、回してます。多数からその乱数、その、戦闘乱数も調整しています。そうですね。エンカウントが状況を再現しています。人間 RTA でも、エンカウントの上限再現します。
この FF は割かしそういう乱数単純な箇所があるのでね。
戦闘の乱数が、人で、調整し、その乱数も調整する人もいるけど、結構大変です。
はい。
1フレームだから。エンカウント、なら、簡単に状況を再現できます。
なるほど、なるほど。エンカウントのやつと、あとはまあその戦闘系の1フレームで動いている乱数がありますと。TASBot なんでね、少し準備に時間はかかってるかもしれないですね。
そうですね。よくTASBot の時に、準備がかかりますが、そっちの環境がちょっと、そっちの方の環境なら、セットアップ時間がかからないはずなのに、
次のね、ボーナスブロックの枠があるんですけれども、こちらはまだ、ビットの方が2500に対して、今2250ぐらいですね。あと250ドルぐらいです。こちらやっ ってる間に達成するのかな。まあ、達成しそうな感じは しますが。こちらはそうですね。FF10 AI-TAS ショーケースって書いてますね。あ、画面変わりましたね。カメラにTASBot くん映ってますね。
In 3, 2, 1.
もう始まるかと思いました、そのカウントダウンで。
はい。奏者の方3名と、右にTASBot くん。TASBot くんの後ろには実際のゲーム画面も映ってますね。
Tim, sorry. The sound's not going through. I'm not sure why.
今、本家の、すいません。
本家で、
Because you're muted.
ちょっと、
Sorry about that.
解説者の
Behind the camera. Tim, do your intro again.
の、
Hello there,
声が
folks.
聞こえ
Welcome
ません
back.
で
You
し
are
たから、ちょ
watching
っと。
Quest for Glory, Hope and Healing 2, benefiting Nami. We have something special for you just now. My name is TinyTim78. I'm going to be your host for the next little bit. The TASBot block, including TASBot plays Final Fantasy. We have a 4 fighters task coming up. You can see they're just getting ready there. But before we do that, we do have a fantastic donation for you. We have received $250 from Exodian, who says, let's make the Final Fantasy X TAS showcase happen. And that ties into our next incentive here, which is indeed our next run. So we don't have a lot of time. We only have the duration of this run to get this met. We have the Final Fantasy X TAS bonus run at
ちなみにこのゲームのビットもございまして、
out of the 2,500 needed. So please get your donations in.
このゲームのビットは最初に決めるキャラクターの名前です。
And please, Dwango, take it away.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I am Dwango AC, keeper of TASBot.
プログラムで操作しているから、そのプログラムが名前入力。
なるほど。そこは確かに設定しないといけないですね。
So, we're currently watching Final Fantasy.
多分もう設定済みなんだとは思いますが。
And we have to start from a completely clean cartridge. So here is a completely clean copy of Final Fantasy. It is as if it was minty fresh out of the box. But we have to clear the console memory as well, so it's in a decidedly deterministic state. We need it to be in just the right pattern. So here we go. This is scary, because I'm going to be swapping cartridges while the console is on. So first, clear the console memory. These weird blue lines are normal. Pulling the cartridge out while the console is still on, don't recommend. Putting the new cartridge in while the console is still on.
今本家画面下に出てる2500分の2254が次のあれですね。お、早い。
Now, don't cause any static electricity.
Great. はい。でも、TASBot 運調整しているから、もうグッドラックをすでに取っています。
確かに。4人戦士。
今その中長が乱数調整みたいです。
なるほど。
最初からカオスの神殿に入って、最初ボスガーランドを倒します。
ガーランドです。
4. All right. We're going to put 2, 2, 6.
もうちょっと待ってれば乱数。
Let me see if I can get that camera a little bit better.
Oh my gosh,クリティカルダスの乱数です。
Yeah, you were not.
おお、クリティカル。
Wow.
24。
Totally not in focus. All right. Now we're back to where we carefully coming back so I don't cause any
4人操作するにはちょっと手間かかりますから、わざと今でも
So
落ち
welcome
て
to
ま
the new
す。
studio. We just set this up not long ago. This is where we'll be doing task giving later on, but I don't want to throw
そ
my
れ
own thing
に
up.
そのレベル
What you
ア
just
ッ
saw happening
プ
on the
の
console
時
was kind
に
of complicated,
も
so I
う
want to
知
explain
性
really quickly.
のパラメータ
Right now we're in the beginning
を
stages.
知性あ
I'll
りま
let
す
the
ね。
X-Man describe what we just did, but
知性
basically we had to
知
completely
性
wipe out
パラ
the
メ
console's
ータ
memory, and we had to
が
wipe
上げ
out the
てい
game to
ま
get it to
せん。
start at a known
そ
value.
れな
If we
ぜ
make
か
it
こ
to
のゲームで
here
は知
unimpeded,
性の
we
効
know
果
we're okay,
が
and we
全
made
く
it.
ありません。
So, my
そうか、
part
死に
is
捨ていわゆ
largely
る。
done. I'm going to pass commentary over to the X-Man.
First, I want to thank
これリュー
everyone
ト
who
は話しかけない
donated
と
for
手
the
に入ら
names.
な
I
い。
think it was just someone who
しかも
really wants
ラ
me
ストダン
to
ジョンに行
finish
くためのアイテムです
my
ね。
highlight task here. But thank you again.
それにその
These
森
names, so as you
の
first noticed, when
は
TASBot
い。
was
カウ
able
ン
to
ト
put in the
率
names,
が
that's
高
because
い。
we
まあ
have a script that's able
なる
to
ほど。
edit the task.
あ、で避けてるん
We
です
did
ね、
this
これ。
beforehand, but not not by much beforehand. And the
はい、
task,
オープニングで
it
す。
sort of just compiled the task together with everything that I pre-recorded, along with the names, and it generated the input
まる
to
でエンディング
enter
のよう
those
なオープニン
names.
グ。
And that's how we get the task to enter these names
先生攻
and
撃
to
を
play
受
through
け
the
た
task.
ら、
The other
確
thing is
実
that, yeah,
に
we
逃
did
げ
have a
ます
lot of console,
はい。
there's a lot
あ、
of
なるほど。
hardware
先生と一緒に出ましたね。
shenanigans and miracles that make this happen. So big thanks to everyone, Dwango and multiple people in the
知性
community
は
that
死
all
に捨
came
てだから
together
表示
to
さ
get
せる
this
だけ
working.
時間の無駄という。
Definitely Vigraytech, Cordimoto, the Axeman. I'm sorry, the Axeman, you're
ま
right
あ
here.
魔
The
導
Moss
士にでも
3212.
知性
There were a lot of people
が
that
全然
specifically
効
contributed.
果
By the way,
効果
this
があ
is
り
being
ま
run
せん。
on a TASBot 32 board made by Onosaurus with scripting help from a number of people. Big Bass has helped a little bit with that. The Moss 3212 again. It's just a huge number of people that make
FF1
this
は
kind of
魔法回
stuff
数厳しいですから
possible.
ね。
So.
That's right. Yeah, you can think of me as like the software guy. Like I just made the task on an
パイレッ
emulator.
ツさんです
And
ね。
actually, so this task is actually part of a
パイレッ
project
ツ
that
9
sort
体
of,
があります。
at first
な
I didn't
ぜ
know that we'd be able
最
to
初から
completely clear out the
戦士
SRAM,
一
so the
人
save
ま
game
で
data. The
落ち
RNG
て
for the
ない
game for
理
that's
由
used in
が
the
この
battle
セッ
is
トです。
saved in the save game data.
イベント戦闘です。
You have to delete that in order to
パイレ
kind
ッ
of get a known starting
ツ
state.
を倒
As
し
if
た
you
ら
just purchased the game and you
船
had it fresh out of the
もらえ
box.
ま
That's
す。
right.
はい
Yeah.
やつです
And in
ね。
fact, I was able to get this particular game new in box.
なんか海賊に
Yeah,
絡
so
まれてるので助けてあげ
part
ま
of
しょう
that
という
meant that I was able to extract the contents of the game, and in fact, it's empty SRAM. And
そういえ
now
ば
we're
これ
crashing that
日
original
日本
save
版
back
だと
onto it
これが
and
海
starting
賊
from.
だと思います。
あ、そうです。そうです。海賊。
So yeah, we've got that.
そして
that
青の
RAM,
方が
we clear out that RAM. That
Pirates.
clears out the.
あ
もう
なるほど。
英語版だと逆です。
あ、そうなんですね。
But this run was kind of made without
そ
assuming
の
that.
青
So the
の
idea was you would
パイ
get
レ
into
ッ
the
ツ
first battle,
が
hold down the A button, and you'll win the fight every time. But you'll take a lot of damage, and one of your guys may die if you're just holding down the button versus those imps that you run into first in the first battle. You know that you'll run into imps. That's based on the console RAM, but based on the SRAM, which is sort of the RNG that controls like how much damage happens in battles. Different things can happen. So the idea was if you did that and then you kind of looked at some numbers that popped up, so like your first damage, you could actually figure out where the battle RNG was, put it in, and kind of like readjust the run on the fly, and you could actually make it sync without knowing what SRAM you started at. But then after you finish the first fight, your HP is going to be sort of like all messed up. You won't know what state you're in. So in order to kind of even that out, what we did is I went to the inn in Provoca before we fought the pirates, and that just sort of evens everything out.
戦士の 攻撃力が武器持っていないとかなり低いけど沼の洞窟に
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I would have had to like resync the beginning and possibly the rest of the run too, since I sort of didn't work out. When I actually made the White Mages run for RPG Limit Break 2019, what actually happened was
なるほ
I
ど。
think I
初期だと何も持ってない
restarted
ですから
knowing that we were
ね。
able
最初の
to
400
do
ギリで
this.
何とかしろってい
And
う。
so there's kind of no shenanigans like that for that.
タスボットはいわゆる実機でタスやってるみたいな感じですね。
So if you've played this game, you know that you kind of get through. You
人間 RTA なら、最初の町コネリアのに入って、そこに武器を買いますが、タスには不要です。
We went straight from the beginning. We went straight to the first boss, and we beat them with just our bare hands. And then we did the same thing with the pirates.
Which is still better strats than I've ever done.
Now you're saying that 2 of our party members are dead. Why are we dragging 2 bodies with us?
Well, the thing is, they're more used to us. They're no use to us alive. And when they're dead, they're less. They hold us back less. That's because every time we get into one of these battles, we've got to run from. We don't have to run.
It takes less effort to haul their corpses around with us.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
This game is totally normal. There's nothing dark here happening at all.
逃げられないエンカウントが
to put your dead party members on.
まあ、
罠タイルだけが逃げる。
Either, well, depending on what version you're playing, it might be a coffin or a ghost following you. But in Final Fantasy, at least in this version, actually most of the Final Fantasy games, you only get to see your main character. I mean, we'll see that later. In Final Fantasy X, you still only see your main character running around in the map. So here we're taking on this boss. We're coming in with. We did pick up a weapon. We picked up a short sword. But we're on level 3. So this is a pretty clutch fight.
いわゆる FF は固定のマスのエンカウントがあるんですね。こういう宝箱の前とか、他にもありますが。
These fighters, by comparison, fighters are going to do it pretty easily.
So I'm going
to ask you a question that I asked earlier because I think it'd be interesting for the viewers. But why is it that occasionally we will one of our 2 living characters, which is now down to 1, we'll go ahead and input the command for the first character and then hold the command for the second? Why do we do that?
That's because every time, so while your cursor is waiting, the RNG is cycling. The RNG for this game is pretty simple. There's just this one counter that indexes into this lookup table, and it looks up a number, and that's sort of like.
我とその扉の前のまっすぐに歩きました。なぜかこのファイナルファンタジーは扉の前のまっすぐがエンカウント歩数ではありません。
そうなんですね。扉の前ってエンカウント動かないんだ。エンカウントランス。
And then it goes.
Exactly, yeah. And so it's a
部屋の下もそうで
number,
す。
so 256,
から
and it cycles every
こ
2
のフ
frames.
ロア出
And
てい
so
る
over 512
時に
frames, which is about 8 seconds,
部屋の
a little more than 8 seconds. That's how long it takes to completely cycle through the entire
yeah,
RNG.
And start over.
Yes.
下に歩い
That is way less complicated than Final Fantasy X.
Oh, yeah.
Which we'll talk about later.
こういう感じで部屋はね、なんていうか、内と外が切り替わるみたいな
Actually, this is a good time.
ものもあるからかな。
Thank you. Okay, we've got loads coming in here. Very generous. Remember, all your donations
そう
go
ですね、
to
マクロみ
the
たいな
benefit
も
of
んです
NAMI.
ね。
We've received $25 without a comment from Heel Turtle. $10 from Out a Comment without a comment from Green Speed. A $26 anonymous donation without a comment. $25 from Twilight Dusk, who says $25 towards the Final Fantasy X TAS.
次のボスがクラウンを渡して、次クラウンを渡してアストス戦闘になります。アストスの防御力が結構高いけど、クリティカル出したらその防御力を完遂できます。
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Final Fantasy X TAS as well.
I actually looked at my console.
前回同じ乱数を引いて、それがアストスから
52
横にミス。
And about
同じ
50 of that is all in playthrough. So 7,000 minus 50. Math.
すごい。
But it's going to be wild. We're going
こ
to
いつが
compress
ね、
it
なん
down
か
to a
王様に、エルフの王
nice
様に化けて
showcase
て
for you guys.
クラウン 持ってきてくれって言ったら、バカめみたいな感じでこう襲ってくるっていう。
Yeah. So we just beat the Dark Elf Astos. This is actually also a pretty tough fight. Casually he's got a spell that he always leads off with, and he almost always casts a spell called Rub that just instantly kills you. And at this point in the game, there's really no defense you have against it. You have to kind of almost count on one of your characters dying. So pretty brutal. But we get real lucky, and he doesn't use it at all.
You get lucky or you force him to be lucky.
Well, you know.
マトヤという魔女ですね。
Now's probably a good time to
マ
talk
トヤ
about
に
TASBot.
渡せば、その
Right, yeah. So this is
マトヤ
a
が
TAS. The
目
TAS
覚め
are
の
usually
薬
pre-recorded
を
on an emulator. So if you were able to play on an emulator, our main site is TASvideos.org. And we have all these emulator-based videos. You can download the emulator. You can download a file that contains the information on the button presses. So all of the input from the keyboard or your controller input comes in. And it plays it back on the emulator. And if you start out at sort of a known state, which we sort of had to simulate with this crazy hardware setup on the hardware, on the emulator it's a lot easier. You can just set the emulator, hit the power state, and the SRAM's clear, the RAM is clear, and you've kind of got this known start state. And if that's the case, you can play through consistently if you have the same button presses. And the NES is actually a really good system for this because it's simple enough that it pretty much it syncs pretty easily. And we say sync, that means like if something happened that wasn't what we expected on the emulator, if the console diverged from the emulator somehow, then we would like get stuck on a wall or die probably. Especially when you're trying to go through the game on level very low levels. If something happens, we die pretty fast.
もう逆です。
The determinism is really important. So a Nintendo console doesn't have any external source of what we call entropy, any external source of a seed with a single random number generator. And the only thing they're using for seeding it is player input because it's the only thing they could. As a result, if you can completely control player input, you can completely control the seed of that random number. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can completely control it, but you can influence it by what button presses you're doing. And I assume that's what you're doing here, where sometimes you're taking a not necessarily circuitous route, but you're taking very unusual steps sometimes.
That's right. So a lot of these things are based on so as far as the encounters, there's actually a very complicated encounter system that you can walk around and know exactly what encounters we see if we know what areas we're stepping and what how far we're going in each area.
のなんか従者みたいな人に。
Real-time runs use that too because that's not that it doesn't take like sort of like real precise timing to do.
神秘の鍵を手に入ってそれがある部屋が
But we analyze this in fast to a very high level and figure out exactly where we need to walk. So you can save some steps by walking into the town of Elfland and going in the castle.
はい。まあ、序盤からこう入れないところがあってね。入れない扉がございまして、まあ、それを開けることができると。ゲーム進行には関係なかったと思いますけど、最初のボス倒したガーランドのところにも確かそういう扉ありましたね。ちょっといいものが入っている。
進行にも必要です。その橋。コネリアの北の橋がには進行必要ですね。そして今 TNT をニトロの
はい。これこの後。
Yeah, so one of them's looking up like this threshold for your random encounters, and that controls how many encounters you get. There's a threshold that tells you, and that's based on the area you're in. So it's like 8 for the outer world, 3 for the ship, and actually no, it's 8 dungeons and 10 in the outer world. So you actually get more encounters walking around the outer world than you do in most dungeons. And there are certain areas where it kind of like just jumps up and it's real high. And one of those is, of course, the bridge for Warmech. And another one is actually as you get into the Temple of Fiends, the last few floors, it sort of gradually gets cranked up a little bit. And the enemies are also getting harder, which makes that last dungeon just so brutal.
Yeah, and even here, you were just one step away. You just couldn't quite make it. And I assume that you picked this because it was the least obnoxious.
Yes.
そうですね。最初の海
sometimes we're trying to get into another area before we get into another fight. Because that kind of that value, if we were to get into the cave, so that's the case in Marsh Cave. We had one more step before we entered Marsh Cave. We would have had a fight in the outer world, but since we made it inside, that kind of like value that we hit there was safe. There's no encounter. In other cases, we actually want to get the encounter right before we get into another area, so that we can avoid these unrunnable fights. And this is going to be a big issue later on. Not so much right now, but later on, we really want to avoid these fights that have a flag that says, you can't run from this fight, you must fight. And of course, that's going to be for bosses. You can't run at all. But on regular enemies, it's kind of annoying because we want to be able to run from them. We do fight some regular fights.
そのもう回る道なんですけど、船の歩数でいいのかなの歩数が、エンカウント率が小さいから、歩数調整しています。
今、あえて迂回してましたね。
are really underpowered, and they go through a little more. They go through a little more.
リセットありの条件なら、ドワーフの洞窟に剣を剣を取ります。
So what level are we right now?
So let's see. We get one. You can. There's a thing here. You can only get one level up per battle. So right now we have enough experience to get one more level than we do. When we beat Astos, we had the ability. We got enough experience.
この洞窟に土の洞窟に歩数
negative 2,300,000 something like that. It's yeah. But so the reason
を消費する必要があるから、この土の洞窟に同じパワー、同じ力を持っているサンゴの剣を取ります。
The fighters, we're just gonna tough it out. And we'll eventually even out because the level ups, this game, the level ups kind of like get more and more spaced out so that by the end, we're hardly getting enough experience. Right now, we're going to get a level up every fight.
なぜその歩数を消費する必要があるのは、このフロアにはディスコデモンのエンカウントがあって、そのエンカウントから逃げられません。
なるほど。
You saw us go to the time, so it's faster. Instead of going to an inn, if we need to regain some health, take some damage later on, we just use a cabin or a heal potion or something like that. And I think we can buy with just the cabin.
But you're never going to save.
Not going to save, but we're going to use
so the
cabin using the outer world, you can save your game, and then you can actually like reset. And you can do some tricks with that. You can use it, you can save your game, you can turn your battle, and then that kind of advances the encounters table past the point where you would skip the fight. So then you can just walk on and you've skipped the battle. But we can't do that because this is a no resets run. And that's just because TASBot isn't that consistent with the resets. So I just made a no resets run for TASBot because TASBot's so awesome.
I'm still hopeful we can make one, and it might actually be possible at this point. We've been advancing our game. Onosaurus in particular made a very, very stable version of the TAS TM32 device. Unfortunately, because of supply chain issues, we can't get a hold of them to make more of them. So if we wait for a couple more months, we might actually have some in stock. We don't sell them at a profit or anything. But, if you would like your own replay device, head on over to TAS.bot. We have a store.tas.bot site. We don't make money on it. It's just people who want to be able to play back runs on hardware they have at home.
Do we have a second for
Decidedly a cottage industry. Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Remember, you're watching Quest for Be Hope and Healing 2.
ある意味交換
We still have
して、
a little bit to go on the Final Fantasy X
土の杖
TAS
を
showcase. We're sitting at
手に入ってない限り、
$2,278.58
進行でき
out of the
ここから進行できま
2,500
せん。
needed. We only have until the end of this run to get that in. So please get your donations in. And if you do that, you'll also qualify for one of our fantastic prizes. We currently have a handmade shiny Eevee plush and the handmade Eevee plush, and they're like roll plushes. They're very special. They're very interesting indeed. And $5 minimum donation gets you into the draw for those. And we also have the Super Nintendo with the component video mod at $25 minimum donation as well. So please get your donations in. Not only are you benefiting Nami, an absolutely fantastic cause, but you can get some more TASBot. Who doesn't want more TASBot?
文字制限がありますね。オーガーと GR オーグルもあります。
We've been going through Earth Cave here, and we've got all these bats.
それがグレートなのか、グレーなのか、グリーンなのか。
If you've played this game casually, you know how annoying these bats are.
雰囲気で感じ取ってくると。
And, you know, they are super annoying for the TAS as well. But, you know, it's really just annoying when I make it. We don't, once we get this run syncing, the bats they're under our control. And so there's going to be some other things later on where we actually have to talk to an NPC and we will kind of get them to move towards us. So there's actually the NPC movement is extremely random, much more so than like the actual battle RNG.
なるほど、そうかそうか。オーガチーフ、緑のやつ。
We can wait on that, yeah.
そう、そのジアウルフ。
There's like counters and accumulators that are doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's based on, and it also uninitialized memory in the cartridge, which is why we had to do this trick where we initialized the console RAM in the beginning. But all that is worth it when we get to just walk right by these bats.
ちなみにウルフのグリーンはウェアウルフですね。
So about that Final Fantasy X run, how does that work?
そうそう、さっきコメントいただいて。
PC version?
ちなみにこの、シャドウのカウント、
はい。
不意打ちの確率がかなり高いエンカウントです。記憶が正しければ 90% の不意打ちエンカウントです。
なるほど。
Virtual intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. You might be thinking that's basically the same thing. And you'd be very close to right.
タスボットで見てるとね、さらっと逃げてますけど、平気で9匹喧嘩とかありますからね。
The computer will actually review what it's done and then improve. So it's a slow process. Virtual intelligence is more like simulating a real intelligence, but it's not going to improve on itself unless a programmer.
まあ、土の杖を
And I should note that that is so wildly different than what
さっきの
the
洞窟のさらに
TAS
奥に
community
進むため
would
のア
normally
イテム
think
で
of
す
a
ね。
tool-assisted speedrun being that it almost stretches the definition, and yet in the beginnings of TASs, that was kind of what we were doing. We were, in some cases, writing scripts to run games, all kinds of crazy things. So
ハーブとかもそうだけど、すごいシンプル化してる。
A very different way to make a tool-assisted speedrun, but it's still
文字制限が6文字だと思います。
And it's in fact assisting
から
you so
面
much
白い名
that
前
you
が
don't actually touch the
入りま
controller.
した。
Nope, don't even touch the controller. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't
重要なアイテムは全部大
had
文字
runs
なの
going
かな。
while I was in town getting shopping.
消費アイテムも
You have
大
you're
文
able
字
to
です
actually complete
あ、そうなん
the
です
whole
ね。
game.
なんかさっき剣とかコーラルとかは
We have a few. I have a few runs that have
1文字目だ
completed.
け大文字だったから
We're
なんか
still working some of the stability, some of like there's a 1 in 64 chance that a certain set of items drops, and I haven't encountered
それ
before
に
because the other 63 options almost always happen.
その
But yeah,
寝る
before
ア
I
イテム
loaded up to come out here
寝
to
袋と
TASBot
テントと
Studios,
カ
I
テー
got
ジ
a complete
はいはい
単語版でそうですけど
where I was completely hands off.
寝袋
Nice.
が文字の文字が長いから 寝袋がテントになってコテージ、テントがコテージになって、そしてコテージがハウスになりました。
まあ確かに英語的な意味だとそうなのかもしれない。
And then we beat the vampire.
コテージっつったらもうなんか簡易的な
And the ruby is the favorite food of the golem, who is kind of
にハウスを持ち歩くが大変そうですね。
Ruby was found behind the vampire.
There's people, there's NPCs in different towns.
まあコテージもそうですけど。
There's a giant in Earth Cave.
そうですね。
The other thing is, go around enough. There's nowhere else you can go.
Fair.
沼の洞窟と同じ銭湯からその銭湯から逃げられないからこの銭湯も逃げられない。
戦うしかない演歌。まあでももう武器も持ってますし、ワンパンですよ。
And so there should be a sword weakness, but that is completely busted.
大
However,
森
our
す
sword
ご
is
い避
strong
けて
enough
くれますね。
and we're a fighter. So as long as we get a good critical hit, it doesn't matter. We can still one-shot them.
Did I just hear you say that there's a programming error that the developer intended one thing, but a different thing actually happens?
Well, that's one of the errors in this game.
One of them.
So,
okay, there's many.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a bit. You know, if you were like me and you got like the big chart, it was the Nintendo Power.
そういえば、クリティカル、このゲームのクリティカル率のバグがあります。攻撃回数が各発
strong against water enemies.
クリティカル可能性がありますね。
There's these weapons that have weaknesses.
そのクリティカル武器のクリティカル率の配列がありますが、バグのせいでその武器のの配列数字こそがクリティカル率になります。例えば、配列の4つ目の武器がクリティカル 4%
So if you're sitting there at home and thinking, nerd, you're right, but this is interesting. If you know how the game or more informed. So, knowing these aspects, knowing how the game works, actually helpful even to real-time runs. Yeah, this is pretty nerdy stuff, but it's also pretty cool.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of feedback between the TAS and the TA community. Just finding tricks because
最初のカオス、土のカオスリッチ。
はい。Where you've got to time things to a frame. It can be tough, but there can be tricks. Just last
通常プレイだと強い魔法がやってくるけど、バランス調整のせいで通常攻撃とミスします。
No, not segmented.
いろいろやらしい魔法を使ってきたイメージありますね。
So this is Fred Coughlin, who's a very talented and tech guy. He has figured out that if you so the way it works is you hold down the B button, and what happens is your guy goes up to the front to be commanded, but since you're holding down the B button, he goes to the back, and as he does this, it increments the RNG.
一つ目が
And then
が
when
1個目
the RNG is
が
in the right place,
光り
you
ま
switch
した。
from A to B.
はい。
And this
光ら
doesn't
せました。
require
もともとこの
there's maybe like a second.
光の戦士ってことでね、一人ずつクリスタル、一つずつ
switch from A to B. It doesn't have to be
ク
very
リスタル持ってるん
precise.
ですよ
So it's
ね。
pretty easy to execute once you've got it planned out. How many times you need to hit B and then A. And,
Interesting.
Yeah, and it seems you get a lot of fights, but the other thing is when you're fighting all of the fights, you get level up really fast. Especially if you reduce your he does the same thing. He reduces it down to one character, maybe two. And yeah, and so when you do that, and this only applies in battle. So outside of battle, you can kind of you can do whatever you have to.
でもその
kind of like get all
一人
your
が
equipment set up and everything.
4
And
人
so since
の
he's got to hit B and then A, it's not like the fine level of control that we have, where we can just wait and it.
4人の分でも
It's
で
a
き
much
ます。
like longer way to get the right RNG. So
レベルが上がって
it still
HP の
takes
最大値が上がってるから逆に瀕死状態になってしまったというね。
It's somewhere between like an hour and a half and 2 hours or so.
Interesting.
Yeah, which the fastest speed,
戦
the
闘の
fastest
中
path
が
that sort of uses all
決
the
ま
reset
って
tricks
い
we
る
were talking about before,
乱数
save
調
your
整の
game
せいで決ま
and,
ってい
and
る
turn off
か
the
ら
power and
別に
everything. That can
回
that
復
can beat the game in under
する
70 minutes.
必要はない。
That's
基本的
Yeah.
にそうです。
Apologies to
はい
the stream if we're getting some audio cutting in and out. I'm
敵が勝手にミスするので。
pre-stream chaos.
Oh,
Audio. What kind of audio cutting in and out?
yeah.
Apparently, it's all of us. We're all cutting in and out a little bit, but
So I should talk to you about what happened before the stream. So, just so you know, folks, we might look calm and comprised here, at least a little, but we're not. Right before the run,
死を倒したので、
I
こ
had
の
a thing
賢
slide off the
者
desk, went to grab it, hit my water bottle,
の
upended
人
it into my
と
keyboard, which then
話
fried
せ
the USB
ば
controller the
カヌ
keyboard was
ー
attached to, which was
Hi.
the same one the soundboard was attached to. So I frantically moved everything around, but now everything is on the same USB controller. So it's probably a little overloaded.
なんという
This was not great, and I'm hopeful that I can
進行で
recover.
きます。
The
に
keyboard
を
currently
渡す
drying
よう
out
にやりま
upside
した。
down across the room, and I will the controller
カヌーはここ
recovers.
の
But I shorted
川を
it pretty bad. So this was not exactly ideal.
渡れますね。まあハウスを持てるぐらいですからカヌーも
Do we have a moment for
楽勝
some
でしょうと。
donations?
All right, so it's a great time, yeah.
Yeah.
そしてま
Okay,
た
yeah, you were cutting out a little bit there again. Okay,
回
so,
り道
right,
をやっ
Final
て
Fantasy X.
放
Do
水
you like
調整
Final
です
Fantasy X? I hope you do.
アンカウンターの調整で
$50
す
from Rob Draven.
はい
Did I hear Final Fantasy X?
ここからぐるぐる
Fantasy
の
One Fighter Only
火山
Shut
か
up
ら
and take my money.
氷の洞
Thank you
窟
so much for
の
that.
2
Professor
択
Ness has donated $100.
の攻
Helping
略があ
robots
りま
take
す
over the
が
world, one donation at a time.
今
Seems
氷の洞窟を
And
攻略しま
$50
すなぜなら
reward.
そこに
Yes, more TASBot, please.
冬石
And $25
が
Valdicorn without any
そうですね
comment.
さっきしれっとね有名なまあバグなのかあれですけど船から直接カヌーに乗り換えられるっていう本来船はね港じゃないと降りられないんですけど
Also, I'm just seeing it on the screen there, hit $27,000 for Nami. So thank you so much indeed to everyone for all your generous donations. Please, please, please keep them coming in. Thank you very much indeed. Back over to you.
Oh, thanks again for everyone who donated. This was great.
Thank you so much.
この
So,
カヌ
you saw we
ー
beat
し
the
ている
Earth
時
Fiend,
に
and then we
も
went off to the other side of the world. We
ハ
talked
ウ
to
ス
the sages
に
in
も
the circle
眠
of sages.
眠り
They
ま
gave
す
us the
ね
canoe, and they told us, go vanquish the fire
Oh.
fiend in the volcano.
面
But
白
we
い
don't want to. That would be that route is kind of there's no reason to
も
do
う
that just
氷
yet.
の
So
洞
instead of going to
窟
the
に
we're going to go to the ice cave.
逃げられないアンカウントいくつありますがこ
Yeah,
の
I mean,
タ
so
ス
the
で
fire fiend in the volcano is one of the 4 fiends,
一つ
and we
も
have to
取り
beat
ま
it
せん
in order to kind of
一
get
つ
through the game
も
without any
遭遇
glitches
しま
here,
せん
which it's sort of, I guess you could say
その
you could say there's sort of a no
船
major glitches run,
の
but there's definitely glitches happening.
の回
But
り
anyway,
道が
so we went to Ice Cave because in Ice Cave we're going to
に
get the
逃げられ
Thunder Stone,
ないア
which
ン
raises
カウン
up
トを
the
遭遇
airship.
しないた
And
めで
having
す
airship is another point here. We just saw sorcerers, and you would probably do
そし
everything
てさっきその
you could
紫
to
の
avoid that
マインド
encounter
フレアが
in a no manipulations run.
あって
Because the sorcerers
そのマインドフレアが
Yeah, they have an
の
instant death
通常
attack,
攻
and
撃
it's
が
not like
即死
anything, and there's no way to
の
defend
効
against
果
it.
があり
It's
ま
just sort
す
of like a hit and an instant kill. And so yeah, you don't want that to happen.
通常
So a
RTA で
real-time run will use encounter
見たく
manipulation
ない
to avoid those
エン
fights.
カウン
But
トです
そうです
so
ね
as a task
あ
author,
通常
that's fine with me.
RTA
I can
人
just
間
run.
RTA で
we are going to go a little bit around here to get
乱数調整していないある程度は
I think this would be the last one we actually like use as a weapon.
まあ、エンカウントの、状況再現ができる、もできるから、そのマインドフレア線をが現れないように調整されています。
That can kind of save some time.
パスのチャートの、エンカウント調整が違ったわけです。
So going to the pause screen adds in an extra frame or something to the NPC like counter, and so we can actually use going to the menu to manipulate the NPC movement.
また剣を取りました。
And that can actually like set frames. You realize I actually like tweaked out every single frame because most of the ways to manipulate the NPC movement involves like either waiting a frame before you go down the stairs or like bumping into them for one frame or stepping like around them. I tested all these different things, like thousands of different combinations, maybe not thousands, at least hundreds of different combinations of all these things just to save a few frames on like these NPC movements.
Dang, that was a nice hit.
Yeah, the flamethrower is pretty nice.
All that XP for one level.
I'm not sure if we actually caught up yet because, you know, we're beating the bosses, and that boss is actually not a bad place to sort of like walk back and forth and beat it over and over because it gives you a lot of experience. The problem is, though, it has a lot of like, instant death attacks. So,
Beholder the Eyeのエンカウント
But there's
なんですけど、
a ribbon. It counts as an armor.
もう一回そ
It
の、
defends against instant death attacks. And so if you get that, then you're like pretty safe
に
against
接
it.
触したらもう一回
We need a lot of gold
ベホルダー戦に入りま
coming
す。
up.
そう
So
です
we're
ね。
gonna get it from
固定マスの
these
エンカウン
here.
トなので、
Because we're not fighting any
よく
enemies.
稼ぎに使
So
われま
we're
す
gonna
ね。
have to get
そうで
that
す。
gold somehow.
We're not selling the cabin?
No, in fact,
ベ
we
ホ
can't
ル
sell
ダ
items
ー
in the game.
の即死 の
This is a
体
Final
制
Fantasy,
が
right?
あ
It
れ
is,
ば
but
よく
so items and weapons and armor all go
経
in
験
different
値稼ぎ
categories.
ポイントとなります。
So
はい。
Coder Wilson here has confessed that the first Final Fantasy he played was what? You played 7 or?
Yeah, my first one was 10, but the oldest one I've
okay.
played so far is 7. Yeah.
Yeah. And I made him play this game casually a little bit earlier today, just so he knew what he was getting
ちょっと
into.
怒られたようで、イビルアイというね、ちょっと骸骨みたいな感じに修正された
What
時が
words
ご
of
ざいます
encouragement。do you have to someone who might want to play
D&D
this for the first time?
Dungeons and Dragons の
I'm not
や
sure.
つですからね。
まあ日本の漫画でもね、バスタードという漫画
I
と
got
同じようなことがあ
stuck
って、
choosing my party.
それがまあ、いわゆる鈴木土下座エポですね。
So it was
ピスコデモンとマインドフレアもそうですから、名前が変わってしまった。
But yeah, if you want to play this game,
あ、そうなのか。
don't get confused. Take it slow.
だからウィザードとソーサラーになってみました。
And
絵はそのまんまだけど。
talk to people in town, which is something I like never do in any game.
だから英語版の初プレイで
quest marker or
この
direction marker.
ウィザード魔法使いと
ああ、まあそうですね。
Not so much.
魔法使いの通常攻撃が かなり強いだよな。
Yeah.
魔法の杖で殴ってき
Are
て
you
る
not entertained?
ドラクで言ったら理力の杖が
Yeah, and I told him, you know, for sure, don't do the Ultima 4, which I played the other night.
今
Yeah, that one is.
これは回り道の女性です。
We're gonna sail the ship around a little extra here because we're setting up kind of like we're setting the encounter state in a certain way to be convenient later.
We just turned around.
またここで降りられちゃう。
That's right. So now that we have the canoe, you can actually use any sort of river outlet as a place where you can park your ship. And remember, the encounter rate is higher on land, and it's the same on
いやでもこれでこれだけ
but there's different fights on rivers.
船の速度が2倍だから、
so we're going to take advantage of the fact that the ship is fast and
の歩
walking
数
speed. So we can get on the ship, move around, and then go on land and get into a random fight. And we want to get this encounter state into a very particular place before we go on. The reason is because, like I mentioned, certain fights you can't run from. And we're going to get a lot of those in these endgame dungeons. And remember, we also can't reset. So one of the other tricks is that you can just reset your game at a certain point and reset that encounter. You actually like hit the power button and let the
それが90 HP を回復するためです。たった一つの回復ポイントです。このTASには。ある逃げられないエンカウントがあるから、そのエンカウントにダメージを受けます。
なるほど。まあそこを消費しておいたって感じですね。でさっき砂漠のキャラバンでね、5万ギルで、妖精の瓶を買って、今ここ、なんだっけ、ガイアの街か。
ですね、その砂漠のマスが普段、着地できないけど、なぜか、そのオアシスのマスだけに着地できます。
はい、通常、砂漠のマス、低くて着陸できませんが、まあ、そのオアシスの、まあ、マップに入ってます。マスだけね。はい、で、妖精に瓶を渡して、空気の、なんだっけ、
空気の水。はい。そして英語版だとアクシエル。そういったもアクシエルがギミック偽物の単語です。ググったらこのゲームがのリザルトが減ります。
So if we have to take extra steps to kind of get around something, like in the very beginning, we actually had to walk a little bit further than we had to get around Conaria, and that got us on these no encounter spaces around Conaria, and I was able to kind of juke out one encounter from before we got to Marsh Cave. So there's all these places where we're kind of doing all these calculations to reduce the number of encounters, number of steps. But sometimes we actually take extra steps. Like I said, to get the encounters, move them into areas where that encounter, that the in that area.
どうやって空気の水を入るにができるのは酸素、オクシジェンのアクシを使って、そして液体、飲み物の小さい単語がの一つがエール、それが酒です。酸素酒になっています。
Ah, so that was the state you needed to be in?
Yes. So the Sea Shrine here has a lot of fights that are not runnable. And we put the encounter at in an area. We got it into a state where we can just go right through here, walk right through, and we won't get any encounters. Now, there's always no encounters on this floor, so this is normal. There's also all sorts of really awesome treasure here, but we're gonna pass it all up. We don't need it. There's one of like some of the best armor in the game is here, and we're just gonna pass by it, and we're gonna get the one item that we need.
ですね、強い鎧あります。このフロアにリボンがあります。そのリボンのという防御が多分防御と全属性耐性があります。それがTASにはもうその防御が不要です。
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
さっき手に入れたのはロゼッタ石ですね。ルフェインジンの街というね、言葉が通じないところで、翻訳こんにゃくみたいな。
Which was pretty cool. I mean, so one of the things you notice if you played the other Final Fantasy games is that like the item names and some of the enemies that recur are all different. And but if you played in Japanese, you can see no, they weren't.
英語版だとヘイバン、スラブがヘイバンです。
On translation. Yeah, so the heal potions used to be called, I think they were just called potions. But in Japanese, like so there's soft potions that heal your stone.
FF そう言われると人魚って出てこないか。
Just like in every other Final Fantasy. So,
in that same train, there are sometimes when you'll see in a Final Fantasy name something that's misspelled, but still makes sense, like a high potion, H-I potion. And there's been a lot of, like, as they developed more games throughout time, the hardware, the available memory space changed and increased, and so
文字制限となしています。英語の文字制限。
なるほど。本家の雰囲気。
Q410, I think it was a previous one, where they had to fit a
このサメはあれ
English
かな、グレート
character
シャーク
into
か
a
な。
certain length.
あ、ホワイトシャークだ。
Example of that, the characters in this game are limited to 4 characters.
Yeah, very, very limiting, isn't it?
この海底神殿にいるから、せっかくだから、この神殿のカオスを足します。クラッケン。
So it's a phonetic alphabet,
そうで
but
す。
it's a syllabic alphabet. So
フラグア
one
イテムの
character
ついで
could
に。
be like ko,
3つ
or
目
like
の
two letters,
オ
2 or
ブ。
3 letters sometimes that we would have.
It often, like,
英語版でオブ。
if I remember
日本語
correctly,
版で
consonant
クリス
and
タ
a
ル。
vowel sound as a single character.
Yes.
こっちでオーブって言うとも
With a
う
few
絶
exceptions,
対にマリオ
they're
になるんで
almost
す
like
けど
a
ね。
single English character lining up with a single Japanese.
マリオワール
But
ド。
that consonant vowel combination.
Yep. And so those, it's just less characters to print out. And so because of that, they make the name, so like 4 characters
なんだろう。
is actually long enough to read
バイオ
most
アイ
Japanese people's names. They can put their name in four hiragana letters or characters.
Not so much for us.
Yep. Nope. So, there's all these different things that happen in translation. That's why they as they started doing more things in
そう、
translation,
日本語だと
they
ディープアイ
added
で
more
すね。
characters, more space to kind of
英語
like
だとなんかちょっ
put
と
these things out. So,
特殊、なんか特殊な。
so yeah,
I mean, our donators have certainly
文
done
字
some
だったような
interesting
気がす
things
る。
with what little space they had.
that's right. And I know that our Japanese restreamers are also generous donators. The Japanese restreamer for my last run at Ultima 4 a couple days ago was
だいたい
actually the one
C
who
をつ
got
け
the
とけば
name.
いいみたいな。
Nice.
Yeah.
C トロルとか。
We really appreciate your efforts, folks.
Yo, arigatou gozaimasu, minasama.
Speaking of generous donations,
クラーケン
shall we
さん。
ask
クラーケンの通常攻撃が
Just about
結構怖いです。
Great minds think alike. Thank you very much.
やつ
Okay, we have seen
当たる
$100
確率
from
が
Epi.
あるから
Can't
回
spell
避でき
Final
ません
Fantasy
け
without
ど
cat. Well, thank you very much indeed.
クラーケンの技
Really
が隅
generous donation there. Thank you.
インク。
And another $20
インクです
from
ね
a rat burger.
隅
without
の
any
技
comment.
が
But thank you
あ
so
って
much
それ
indeed.
が
We've raised over $27,000 for NAMI. Remember, all your
ブライン
donations
ド
go
の
towards
効果
NAMI.
がありますが
That's
その
a
効
fantastic
果
cause.
が
We are supporting NAMI. They
結構
are the
低い
National
から
Alliance on Mental
別に
Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, whose work is focused around 3 pillars,
目が見えなくて
education
も
support,
当たり
awareness, and advocacy.
当たります
For advocacy, NAMI engages in
目隠し
mental
プレイ。
advocacy, and supports
クレ
NAMI
ヨン
state organizations
ブライ
in
ン
their
ドホー
state
ルデッ
level
ド。
advocacy efforts. NAMI also operates a national helpline available Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, which provides information, referrals, resources, and a compassionate,
ブラインド効
understanding,
果
trained
といっても
volunteer.
文字制限のせいでダークとなっています
It is such an amazing cause, very personal to myself as well,
HP131 の上に
having
ダークって書いてますね。
few issues in the past. So please, please,
あ
folks,
暗い
all your donations go towards helping
ということ
NAMI.
です
It is really
はい、
appreciated.
倒しました。
Okay, back to you.
shout out to Ratburger, a friend of mine. That's his online name. He
Oh, thanks.
actually has a legitimate name. So.
はい、これで2つ目のクリスタル。
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, Rat.
And thank you for talking us through this long boss fight where we don't really have any other option
通常プレイだ
than
と
over and over
よく
again.
3つ目と
Pretty
そうですね。
slowly
なりますね。
because
通常
Kraken
三つ目
has
です。
800 HP.
普通に行くと2つ目の
And,
グルグ火山。
that's actually That fight's actually not as bad as if you saw the White Mage run.
Mage was
excruciating.
Yeah. タッキーの毒
But the
数だっ
problem
た
is
っ
there's
け
really no way around it. We have to kind of
に
really have to get through Kraken there. Otherwise, you know, we could come back and get him later, but it would just take so long to get through the Sea Shrine again. It's such an outplayed place, so we kind of have to we have to get that fight done with.
So what's our general battle tactic at this point when we're not running there? Are we using potions or spells?
Nope, we fight and we fight.
We are
That's right. I mean, our
部屋
fastest
があっ
fighter.
て、その部屋の中に
Yeah, fight.
ロボ
You
と
know, that's the thing
話し
about
か
these
け
earlier Final
て
Fantasies. There wasn't a whole
ワー
lot
プ
you
キュー
could
ブ
do. You could fight
を
and
取り
you
ま
could
す。
cast magic.
はい。
And as you saw, you don't have
で
any
も、そ
the
の
magic users don't
ロ
get
ボ
very many
の
casts of their spells.
So get a really big
の
sword.
動きが
That's right.
ランダム
Yeah.
だ
But you know,
し、
that's why the
そ
White
の
Mage challenge is so fun. As we saw
その
in
部
our
屋に
right
入
there,
る
because
マ
the
ス
White Mage
が
is white
強制エン
magic,
カウントです。
and the White Magic is pretty cool if you're
そう
fighting
で
an
す
undead
け
enemy.
ど、そのロ
And
ボ
it's
が
also
そのマ
useful
ス
if you
に
recover your HP and you don't want to
に
carry
入
around
るこ
healing
と
potions.
ができて、
Because
そのマス
in this game,
に
you can
話
get
し
to
か
the
け
item
て、
shop, but you can only buy items
固
one
定エ
at a
ンカウン
time.
トマス
すごい
を
And you can
飛
only
ば
use
し
them
ます
one at a time.
わあ、すごい。
So if you
ここにいる
want
か
to heal
ら
yourself
演歌
with
しない
heal。potions, you gotta do it one at a. You gotta buy them one at a time and use them one at a time.
Thank goodness we've
まあ
evolved
そ
past
の
this point.
裏
I promise
その
I'll play
後
this game
ろ
sometime.
の
Okay.
I promise.
I have
宝
used it, but it
箱が
was
結構
a
強
fun
い。
experience.
ね。
One thing I should point out that we
も
just
う
did here
一
is
つ
we
の
walked
リボン
into that
と
room and we talked to
デ
the
ィフェン
robot.
ダ
And
ディフェンダーあ
there's
ります
supposed
ね。
to be
はいはい
a square
あり
that
ま
the
す。
robot was
お
standing
金もあ
on.
るし。
If we would have walked one step further
ピロリ
into
ス
that
ク。
room, we would have had this big fight. And we can just run from that fight,
まあ
but
英語
it's
版
still
で
a
キュー
pretty
ブで
good
すね。
time save just to be able to
はい。
like let the
ワー
robot
プキュ
step
ーブ。
on there and then
どうやって
be on our
この
way and
普通
avoid
の
this
キューブを使
spiked tile that we would have
う
to
手
fight,
段
or run from.
なぜ
See, he manipulated his
貴
position
重
so he
な
didn't deal with it.
アイテム
Exactly.
が
We made that
初期
robot
プレイ
walk
で
where we wanted him
通
to.
常プレイ
And
で
that's
よ
like
く
a
わ
one
か
in
ら
a
ない。
million. I mean, maybe not one in a million, but it's a pretty low probability for him to be there exactly when you enter the room. But I made it happen.
Nice.
Yeah. And the other thing though is that even if you could do that in a real-time run, you don't want to, because some of the best treasure in the game is right behind him.
Really?
Yeah, those treasure chests that were lined up there, it's all awesome stuff. One of them is a ribbon that protects you from every status ailment and reduces damage from every element. Pretty nice.
I like ribbons like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I would wear a ribbon if I had that kind of ribbon.
And the ribbon appears in like every other Final Fantasy game too. So, yeah, that's, they kept that. It's the most important piece of equipment.
Just one note on that: it's either an
ロゼッ
equipment
ト
or
の
an
石
sometimes you'll see
Oh,
it
that's
come
right,
across as an
yeah.
effect and not an equipable item.
That's
But yeah,
right,
it
yeah.
does show
が
up
あるから
repeated, like every
In
other
some
Final
form,
Fantasy I've
yeah.
ever seen.
So we got the
博
slab
士と
in,
話し
at
て
from the mermaids
レ
there.
フェイン
And
を
then
話せるようになりま
we
し
went
た。
to the
はい。あ、
waterfall.
これですね。そう
So
そう。
now we're going to
博士
take that slab
数
and we're going to show
数
it to
秒
Dr.
に
Who.
話せるようになりまし
Now
た。
I wish I could do this when I was, I mentioned learning a new language. I wish I could learn a new
それ
language.
に
Just talk to Dr. Yeah, we bring him the Rosetta Stone.
乱数調
to,
整
talk
して
to
い
him
る
there,
から、
and all of a sudden you
博
can
士
speak
が
this new language.
Very
あ、
nice
なるほど。
manipulation that
に
can move towards you too.
That's
歩い
right.
てい
Yeah,
ま
of
す。
course. Of course.
手前に
ちょっとだけ
Towards us.
タイム
It'd
ラ
be
グ
nice if you
で
could
す。
get him to
い
move
や、
a little bit
でもすごい
further,
重要。
but
そう、
it's
クラスチェンジ不要です
sometimes
ね
it's。so hard to
ストーリー
manipulate
上は
these
関係ないの
things.
で。
And because we just had a really difficult NPC manipulation with that robot.
クラスチェンジしません。
はい。
Someone's going to ask me when I get home after the event, what did you learn from this? I'm going to be like, a new language.
このエンカウントが逃げられないエン
But
カウン
no,
ト
yeah,
で
the
す。
language of geekiness.
そしてさっき寝袋とカーテージ
We did
使
all
っ
these
て
things.
い
We
る
got the
のはこ
cube
の
from the robot in the
歩いて
waterfall.
いると
This is
こ
another
ろ
fight that we
の
can't run from. But luckily, we've
ゾン
got
ブル
the flame sword. So they actually did connect.
から
There's
逃げられ
an
ないから
elemental
なる
weakness
ほど。
type And they actually did connect that. The problem is there's only a few weapons that actually have an elemental flag.
これも日本語の文字の関係か、文字数の関係か、ミノタウロゾンビ。
Excalibur. Excalibur just has every element flag lit up. And there's no element, so the enemy's elemental strength doesn't manage, just weaknesses.
So that was programmed in at least.
Yeah.
Weakness, but not strength.
That's right.
絶対して手に入れてね、ルフェイン語を覚えてないと、ここの人に話しかけても何言ってるか分かんないっていう感じになっちゃいます。
And doesn't Dark do absolutely nothing?
この人。
Yeah, that's right. So when you saw we were Dark on the Kraken there, that Dark that's another bug, that the Dark does nothing. There's a lot of spells where especially like these effect magic spells that they didn't like kind of wire up exactly what the effect was supposed to do. So one of them is Dark. There's a bunch of other effects too that like didn't work.
その人に話しかけるとチャイム。
Fortunately, though, if you watch the White Mage run, you know that they
ミラージュの塔
はい、
に入るには必要なです。
そうですね、ミラージュの塔、最後の風のクリスタルを手に入れるためのダンジョンに入るためのアイテムですね。
最後と言っても、次です。
あ、そうね。The founder of TAS videos, he actually posted like long time ago.
火のクリスタルが最後のクリスタルのクリスタルとなります。
火がまだ残ってました。
So, casually walking around with one party member with 3 hit points. I am absolutely terrified at this point.
砂漠の奥に。
Yeah, you have 3 hit points. Everyone else is dead. So you got one guy with 3 hit points hauling 3 corpses around behind you.
3? We've got 3 whole hit points. Come on.
I mean, I gotta be honest. If anyone else walked in with that kind of rage, I would give up in fear too.
Yeah, the enemies here are pretty dangerous. And normally, so the encounter rate here, or at least, so the rate that, you notice that every time we start a fight, we pick run, and we get to run right away. That is not going to happen normally. The RNG, especially with no manipulation, when you pick run, there's so every turn in battle, one of the things it does is it takes the order of everyone. There's up to 9 enemies in every fight. So if you have the small enemies and there's 9
そしてあとにマンカットもあります。それがラクシャサ。
ラクシャサね。はいはいはい。
And then what it does is it randomly picks 2 and swaps them. Yeah. And it does that, look at how many times it does it, but it's not enough.
ブルーディー。
and also,
あ、これそうか、ドラゴン系逃げられない。
kind of a sure luck manipulation.
HP3 で。
like a kind of a completely random ordering. So, as a result, your party members are more likely to go last.
ブルードラゴン。
Compared to the enemy. The enemy is more likely to go before you.
まあ、
just because of how the
この見た目で分かってくれと。
You just took on a blue dragon with 3 hit points?
Yeah.
You're
このゲームのドラゴン全部が D で略しています。
It also has a thunder
Red D, Frosty, Zombie D, Blue D. そして今、重要武器を手に入りました。でも装備しません。
Now, you say you run right away, but in many cases, it's pausing up to 2 seconds to manipulate luck.
防御か武器を使えば、栄翔が出ます。魔法の栄翔が出ますね。無限に使えます。
そうですね。魔法使える。
ベインソードと言ってもそれがレイズサーベル。
あ、レイズサーベル。クラウダ
そうです。レイズサーベル。サーベルがクラウダの。
はいはいはいはい。
それが毒即死。
そうそうそう。敵を、まあ、毒の霧みたいなやつで即死なんですけど。
このゲームのバランスなんですけど、耐性があれば、 耐性があれば、促進の耐性があれば、即死する確率がゼロのはずだったけど、その乱数自体がゼロになったら当たります。そして乱数の配列にはゼロの3つのゼロがあります。
乱数表にゼロ3つあるから、まあそれ引いたらクラウドで即死と。
それに乱数の配列の数が256です。
はい、256分の3。
そうです。確率が256の分の3。
約 1% ですね。
そうです。まあ、そう言っても、ティアマットがその耐性がないから、約7分の1ですけど。
一番早かったですね。カオスの中でも。
でも、やはり、次の進行が、戦闘作戦が見えますね。レイズサベルの多数チート技。
で、ぐるぐる火山。本来はね、カヌーとかでこう、結構ぐるぐる回っていくんですけど。まあこの順番の方が早いと。こ
の溶岩タイルには、歩数が上がっていません。カウンターできないけど、今、そう言っても、溶岩ではないマスを取っています。まだ、歩数調整しています。
Where are you, Snow?
よく、RTA、通常 RTA でほぼ全部の溶岩タイルに歩きます。
That resonates with me, so thank you so much indeed. Very quickly, before we hand it back, we do have some Bid Wars incentives coming up. Very quickly, the next run after the TAS,
R ヒドラはファイヤーヒドラなんですが、こっちは色の方が略されてるのかな。
Monster Hunter World, and we do have a few incentives for that will need to be cut off towards the beginning of the run. We've got Name the Hunter. Currently, Mount Dumptyton is ahead by $1 on that one. We've got Choosing the Main Weapon, the Switch Axe, and we have a Name the Palico, currently Dump Truck.So if you'd like to get your donations in for those, please remember all your donations go towards Nami. Thank you very much indeed. And back to the TASBot.
決して草生えているのではない。
By the way, TASBot's runner choice is to name the epoch TASBot in
上の
Yes.
の部屋なんですけど、そこに、
Yeah, if you're confused, Snow is my nickname in World of Warcraft, so these are all my WoW
2つの強制エンカウントタイルがあります。英語版でアガマ。
And I make no correlations between myself and that character.
日本語版、ファイアリザードですね。
はいはいはいはい。
So we were wandering around with 3 hit points. Now we're wandering around with 1 hit point, waiting to
通常の RTA でそっちが稼ぎ、経験値稼ぎことです。
So you notice we didn't kind of like take just like lava as we could. And this is another step at kind of like grooming that encounter system to where we want it to be for the final dungeon, which is coming up in a little bit here. また
D&D のネタのマリリスがケリーになりました。
And the volcano does not. So
名前は変えられてるの。
kind of like groom that in.Take some extra steps there so that when we go into the final dungeon, now we're in a good state. We can just walk right through and run from all the fights. Or
輝きを取り戻したので、ルートを使って2000年前のカオスの神殿をフロストギー。
Yeah, we're not going to heal at this point. Come on.
Did we ever use that?
ホワイトドラゴンか。
I think we used it earlier. Maybe when we it might have been like when we used the floater stone to get the airship.
なぜかホワイトドラゴンが、吹雪のドラゴンと変えられました。
確かにね。色的にそうなったのかな。
So yeah,
on our way to the other town that I don't know what it's called. That one.
Yeah. This is the that was where we needed to use. So I guess we didn't see it.
ブラックナイトかバッドマンと
they speak a different language because they're descended from the
バットです
Sky
ね。
And
バットマンだ
if we hadn't done the learning the new language, then we wouldn't be able to talk to them.
強制エンカウントのデスビーホルダー。
So here's our Bane sword at work again. That Phantom has something like 600 HP.
Had.
Yeah.
デスアイで
And
す
all
よ。
sorts of other nasty attacks. But yeah, luckily the lava takes you down to 1 HP but can't kill you. So once, if you don't mind being at 1 HP, it's pretty
ゴーキメラ
convenient.
か。
I mean, I minded, but
この、
yeah.
パープル
Yeah, you know,
パープルウォ
if you're
ーム
gonna actually
の
have a
戦
fight and
闘
you're
から
not
逃げられ
manipulating
な
your
い。
luck afterwards, then
から
it's a little scarier.
パープル
This is another fight we can't run from.
タス
but
シ
again,
と技を
poison
使い
smoke.
ます。
タスシと技。クラウダーよく当たるな。
And here's our level 14. I think we make it one more level this run. So in the final dungeon here, you have to go through and
パープル
you
が
have to defeat all 4
普
teams
通の
again,
ワ
except
ム
they're even
と
stronger.
なってしまいま
They
した。
have like some extra, more powerful attacks. They have more HP, more like basically they've been
この
buffed,
FF1 のストーリーは
but
ね、
you've
タ
still
イ
gotta
ム
beat
リープ
them,
もの
and
とい
they're
う
right in
か
your、way. And
ラ
at
スボ
this
スの
point,
カオ
the
スが、
encounter rate starts to inch up a
現代
little
に
bit,
蘇っ
and the
て、
enemies are getting
光の戦
harder.
士を殺してガーランドに転生するという
And
ね。
there's, you know,
それをずっと繰り返
remember
してる
we
みたいな。
fought Lich before in Earth
で、現代
Cave.
でガーランドとなって
It's
倒され
not
たら
an
なんか
easy fight,
カオ
but
スにな
you
ってる
know,
みたいな、
not
な
so
んか
bad.
そんな感じだったと思います。
So if you're not manipulating luck, the first thing he usually does
さ
is
そ
he
のさっ
casts
き
ice
のエン
cubes.
カウン
It's
ト
a very
で、
powerful
アスミ
hit
メ
everyone's
デュー
spell,
サ
and we just
Got
manipulated
it.
that away. Sort of a lower probability, but we can do it.
英語版で
This
グルメデューサ
one,
と
we're
な
gonna
っ
do
て
the
いま
same.
す。
Well, we're gonna go first.
その
I noticed
緑
when
メ
you
デュー
select
サ。
Bane,
結構待ちます
is
ね。
that because we haven't earlier
通常の RTA で面白い技、そのエンカウントで面白い策を
Yeah.
します。
So the Bane sword, we're
その
using it as an item in battle.
小さい線で、
Ah, so you're not actually
フレア
Exactly. So
があ
anyone
っ
can equip
て
the、Bane sword. In fact,
その
we
前
did
に
in the White
魔導
Mage's
士を石化したら、そのフレアからダメージを受けません。
And I don't think that the fighter can equip the Bane sword unless
だから
you get
わ
a
ざ
class
と
game. It's not a great weapon to equip anyway.
そのメデューサから魔導士
Anyone
を
can,
石
so
化
all
し
of
て
these pieces of equipment that are usable,
フレア
anyone can
の
use them.
帽子
Ah, so we're using it for its effect,
の
but not
防
using
御
it as
と
a
なりま
That's
す。
right.
Got
And
it.
there is equipment that gives you the effect of like
こんな風に
attack
各フロアで
magic
ね、
that does
過去の
decent damage on all the enemies. There's
クリスタル守っ
equipment
てた
that
カオ
gives
スとの
you the
戦
effect
い。
of healing your whole party, which is another reason why Spellcat, the white mage and black mage are just harder to use in casual play because you can just get these items by the end of the game and you've effectively anyone can use magic just by going to their item menu.
I feel like it's like we're holding up the sword and they're just in awe of the sword's power and then just die.
Keel over.
That's pretty much how it works, you know. Poison smoke terminated.
Yeah.
Well, before we run out of run to talk
ま
over,
た部屋
I again want
の
to say thank you so much
下
for
には
how
歩
much work
数
you've put into this personally.
エン
About
カウン
how
トの
many
歩
hours do you think
数
you've
しま
spent
せん
making
から
this tool-assisted speedrun?
下の方と
You know, like this
のマス
particular
を取っ
run,
てます。
not that much because I already had kind of all of the framework to do it. But I've probably spent, you know, a few hundred hours on like just doing different Final Fantasy
So like,
runs.
grr.
I've done this run. I did the White Mage
Grr,
run.
Sonny.
I've done the runs on TAS videos that use resets. And every time I do a little bit, I've kind of got to go back and think like, oh, what else can I do? I go back to my optimization scripts and I found other little things like, oh, if I hit the B button here instead of A to dismiss this dialogue and then hit up and A at the same time, I can tweak out one more frame. Because even when the run is like over an hour long, we're still aiming for every frame in TAS videos. That's what TASing is all about.
It's true. Every frame is precious. So many jokes there. Anyway, this is a special type of...
Yeah, because there's only one place in the RNG that we can get this to happen. So there's actually 3 out of 256 chance of getting to work. But if we have to go first, and when we're going up against these bosses, we got to go first, because if we don't, they're going to go first and they're going to slaughter us. We only got 1 HP. But anyway, if we go first, if we need to go first in the battle and get saved, we got 1 in 256 chance.
Wow.
攻撃します。の攻撃が。
So, and we're going to have to do that,
そして最後のカオスのラスボスでもきっと技が効きます。
Here is the final boss, and
うわ、すごい。時間もぴったりだな、これ。
Poison smoke terminated.
That's it? That's all?
That's it.
Was that time?
That's time.
Wow, that's
Good
time.
Game.
Alrighty. Nice. Man, that was a whirlwind tour. If you would like to see more tool-assisted speedruns, come on to TASvideos.org. I am the senior ambassador for TASvideos.org. Frank, I'm sorry.
The Axeman.
The Axeman. The Axeman is also on
the ambassador team. Thomas is just here to witness the crazy, but hold on to your hats. He's coming back next to show Final Fantasy X. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Again, if you have any questions about what TASBot is, head on over to discord.tas.bot, and we have some other news for you to share after the Final Fantasy X run of other things we're doing ourselves tonight. So be sure to stick around for the next run. Signing off for the Final Fantasy TASBot run. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you so much indeed, Dwango and Axeman, Coda Wilson. Absolutely amazing task there. Final Fantasy. Very quickly, before we go to the quick intermission, we've got some donations for you. We have a $50 donation again from Burger, who says, Coda Wilson is a shadow priest legend. And I must point out, as a WoW player myself, amazing to see the support of your guild there, Coda Wilson. It's so amazing when that happens. It's absolutely fantastic. $25 from Jamblar without a comment. Thank you for your donation. $15 again from Heel Turtle. And $15 another donation without any comments. But thank you so much to your amazing donations for Nami. 27,278 raised so far.
256の3が、最初のファイナルのファミコン版と、NES 版だけが、使える技だと思います。
はい。ということで、ファイナルファンタジーのタスボットプレイズですね。ピンクパジャマさんに解説いただきました。最後何か一言ありますか？
最後まで見てください。
はい。
このイベント。
はい。では、ピンクパジャマさんに解説いただきました。どうもありがとうございました。
はい、ありがとうございました。お疲れ様でした。
はい。では、次のゲームですが、このファイナルファンタジー、今、本家の画面にも出てますが、ファイナルファンタジー10の AI-TAS ということで、セットアップのボーナスブロックのですね、ドネーション達成されたようなので、こちらがおそらく、プレイされるかと思います。では、一旦切り替えますので、少々お待ちください。 す。